Okay, so I'm going to go through my game from last week. I'm the black pieces, and I'm playing against Bangor, and Kevin played e4, I followed up with c5, trying to move down Sicilian. I've had some wins with Sicilian online, and I thought I would try and head the game down that direction. The game continued b3, c6, bishop b2, e6, knight c3, a6, and then a4, which I thought was a little bit strange. I hadn't quite seen a4 before, but as we go through the game I'll show how it ends up embarrassing the c5 pawn, and perhaps I need to do a little bit of work to work out how to defend against that particular move. a4, sometimes you encounter the knight then skipping up to b4, such as this, but I think it can create a nasty outpost for the white pieces if the game continues f3, a5, and then b5. Obviously a5 would be the move you didn't want to play there. The other possibility after a4 is knight d4, which after knight f3, knight takes f3, and then queen f3. I think the black looks a little bit behind in development. He still hasn't been able to switch off the c5 pawn for the d pawn, as well as this. Then a third possibility after a4 is b5, but a4 is in some ways a Marcosi type plan, I think I'm right in saying. You obviously don't have b5 anymore. It slows down the pushes a6 and b5, because now after b5, a takes b5, a takes b5, rook a takes a8, and then after knight on g to e7, you've got the terrible, bishop takes f5, and already white's down, or black is down a rook and a pawn. The game's pretty much over. So a4 perhaps holds some possibilities there. So after a4 then, I considered those three possibilities and decided that I would just continue along with bishop f7, or bishop e7, sorry. The game continued knight f3, d6, then c4, knight f6, queen e2, and then bishop d7. White staying very flexible, getting his bad bishop out and allowing to castle either kingside or queenside. I think I'm already making mistakes here. My bishop really wants to go to the b7 file, but to the b file, and act along the long diagonal. Because of the early push a4, it becomes a little bit tricky to get the bishop onto there without really messing up the queenside pawn structure there. So I decided to try and move my bishop into the centre of the board, and perhaps try and move it on to c6 later. And at the same time, I'm starting to think, well, which side should I castle? Also, I thought here that with the queenside fianchetto, and white's putting a lot of pressure on the f6 knight there, which is quite valuable in defending this pawn, especially now because white has the knight coming down to this square, and potentially the queen coming out to h5. It was beginning to look as if perhaps black shouldn't really castle kingside because of that type of attack, which can lead to some trouble. So white castles, and I play queen c7, putting the queen onto the c7 square acts to defend e5, attack the king side superficially, and keep an eye on the queen side. So I thought it was the correct move to play. And after white plays rook on f to e1, which is a good move, building up on e5 there with a number of pieces there. With the queenside fianchetto, you've got the bishop, a pawn, the knight, and now two strong major pieces hitting it. So I think at this point White is looking strong, and with retrospect now, I have the incorrect plan here. So my plan was to capture the bishop there for a knight by playing knight a5, and therefore the knight can, therefore the bishop can retreat or to d3 or be lost, and that was the plan I went with. But why is this a bad plan? Plan is because White has the response pawn to d3, which Ribke doesn't seem to like or find, presumably due to the breaking of White's pawn chain. However, he gets compensation, I think, via semi-open d-file, and the game continues like this then, with knight a5, d3, knight takes c4, and then d takes c4, and I think that position becomes very strong for White. Semi-open d-file, everything building up onto the e5 square, and Black has a backward pawn there on d6. It's becoming a little bit difficult for him. He's cramped in space, and now the files are opening up for White. And I think my plan was incorrect there. I think the last thing I wanted to do was take White's bad bishop for a knight, and at the same time give him this, although he breaks his pawn structure a little bit, give him these open files to attack on my own castled king. So I decided that the best move is the castle queen side. I don't think king side offered me any better chances, and then I talked about the fiend shadow bishop there on b2 with a good potential mating attack then on the king side with the knight and queen. So I kind of got a little bit scared and castled long, but I think either way castled was in big trouble. The move Ribke suggests here is knight moving forward to g4 rather than what I do, which is retreat it back. And after rook on a to d1, I play f5, hoping now to try and open up a file myself if he plays en passant. And I think I probably would have captured back with the g pawn maybe, or maybe the knight, but probably the g pawn, to try and open the g file. The game continues then, bishop c1. I play h6. White's trying to prevent push g5, and then he plays e takes d6, and then bishop takes d6, and this is it here. This is the strike now that White has been waiting for. It's actually 2 games vs 2 games on the other tables. I'm table 5. White must win this to win the match, and I must try and draw it to draw the match, or win it to win the match. And at this point, White strikes with knight e5, bishop takes e5, queen takes e5, queen takes e5, and rook takes e5, and there you have it. c5 pawn, which was the initial pawn pushed into the Sicilian Open, now feels embarrassed. Saying a knight on the rim looks dim. You can see here how Kevin activates his knight to success. There's knight b2. I incorrectly play the d2, and this is really the end of the game for Black. Ribke drops Black's chances here from White having an advantage of 0.75 before the rook move to now White having an advantage of 1.5 with the incorrect placing of the rook in the second rank. The rook really was doing a fine job threatening back rank mate and holding the White's rook on e1. White plays the sweet move, blocks in the rook, and at the same time is hitting the e5 square for a fork. Black can't take the c2 pawn because knight b4 forks rook and king, losing rook. And I make a simple blunder, which is I try to open up the original attack on the c2 pawn, which is a blunder. I missed the fork pretty much.